Definitely. See, you mentioned kind of the T structure in terms of the video analysis. Obviously, there's the kind of the scouting team as well, which tends to be, when clubs bring in data personnel, it tends to be to do with the scouting and the recruitment of players and things like that. So can you talk a little bit around the kind of alignment with the existing scouting team, James, in terms of who was already there and how then data was maybe leaned on a bit more in the recruitment process? Because you can see the kind of type of squad that Sunderland have been building over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, in terms of what it was then to what it is now. We've got some, great young, talented players we've got many players now that could be sold for 10, 50 million plus. And that comes down to good recruitment. And a lot of that, I'm sure, has some link to data. So around that, if you can, James, in terms of the data and aligning with the recruitment team.
Yeah, so Stu Harvey, who's the head of recruitment there, started actually at the same time as me, but we were, I think, two of the first hires under that new ownership. And so we had this great opportunity to kind of build our departments up together. Stu's a sensational head of recruitment. He's incredibly knowledgeable, and he's a traditional scout in many senses, but he's also very open to new ways of working and using data to inform the decision making. And I think what we both, in our very first conversation, what we both knew was that it's not about one or the other. It's about marrying the two together really well. And Stu, like I said, some people had worked on things in their own time, and Stu had done that at his previous club, Blackburn. He developed a way of working. He developed a kind of algorithm that suited him. And so an early part of the work together was trying to turn that into something more rigorous. So how can we do that and expand that across the whole globe? Well, it's slightly exaggerated there. I think we actually did it across about 40 leagues, but how can we expand that in a way that he can see a lot more? And again, the kind of the way that I like to describe this is a funnel. So as an individual, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many games you can watch and players you can see. So how can I expand that vision without hiring tons and tons of people? So the top of the hopper was kind of data and analysis. How do we take, millions of players globally and narrow that down into something that the scouting department then can then manage? That's not to say if you went in the top of the hopper and you were sort of, let's say not prioritized as a data a data scouted player, that didn't mean you couldn't continue through the process. It was just trying to narrow down that field of view into a more manageable number. And then from that point, it was the scouting, the recruitment team taking that on, but also still using data and data collection from their more subjective viewpoint and collecting that and then turning that into something that then led them down to the head of department at this point, maybe the head coach is looking at them more, the sporting director is looking at them more, and trim that group down even more so to kind of a long list. And then obviously from a long list, you get down to your short list of guys that you're actually going to really go out and take some action to try and bring into the football club. But every step of the way, more data is getting added into the process and more detail is being delivered on each one of those players. So step one is like giving you kind of general high level stuff. Step two is like, okay, let's layer this up with some really specific stuff about that player, that position. And then step three is like, okay, are they absolutely the ideal player we want in that role? And a big part of that is actually the playing philosophy. How do we want to play as a football club, and how can we align those metrics to that playing philosophy? And I see it as absolutely fundamental to building out a football club. Again, I think it's something Christian did really well to address early on, and the head of coaching, Stu English, developed was a playing philosophy. How do we want to play as a football club? That is our central tenet of our club, and everything will branch off of that. And so the next level was for Stu Harvey to develop recruitment profiles that were in alignment with that playing philosophy, and then for me to develop analyses and maybe even proprietary metrics that align to those recruitment profiles. So everyone is lining up with something that's at the center of the process. And I think that served the club really, really well. Signed some great players. We put some constraints on that as well. We were looking to lower the average age of the squad a bit. We knew that we'd be a bit of a selling club for a while, although I think you can now say that that's changed in literally in the last couple of weeks, where there's sort of bigger money names are starting to come in now. We were trying to be cost effective, not spend a lot of money on a very experienced guy when we can maybe bring in a younger, less experienced guy that we could develop, and that's obviously putting a lot of trust in your coaching team to develop players. So yeah, that was kind of, again, broadly speaking, how that whole thing played out. And I think, if you really look at the record since the new ownership has come in, tons of hits, really, really good signings, very few that you go, that one didn't pan out. And that's not to say that's a way that you should judge recruitment, but I think it's indicative of where the club are now, that philosophy and the processes that were put in place then, and as I understand it, still broadly followed today, set the club up to go on that upward trajectory that they're on at the moment.